Hello, guys. What is up? And welcome to this very special WrestleMania 36 1 year on retrospective. I'm joined by J. Josh Porter and, of course, Champagne Charlie. And we're talking about probably the weirdest WrestleMania in WrestleMania history. So last year, of course, it was heavily affected by the pandemic. This year's obviously somewhat affected by the pandemic with the limited seats and still going for 2 nights. But last year, what a weird year it was. But I just thought we'd have a look and see if 1 year on that we're able to look past some of the obvious glaring omissions and able to respect it as just a normal WrestleMania and look at some of the moments. So first kind of thing is, one of the big deals coming out of WrestleMania 36 was the reliance upon cinematic matches. And so, of course, one of each featured on both nights. You had the Boneyard match that was the main event of night 1, and of course the Firefly Funhouse contest that took place during night 2. What do you guys, looking back now with fresh eyes, like, you know, what do we think of these? 2 very different matches, but they're cinematic, so.
Well, here's the thing. The whole thing in itself, WWE were faced with something they absolutely knew nothing about, which is what we all did with the pandemic, you know what I mean? So it's trying to make the best of what the situation was. And to try and avoid, things from being the same just in an empty arena, because you're going to get depressed looking at the empty arena anyway. So I think that's one of the elements why the cinematic matches were brought in. The match between AJ Styles and Undertaker, I really did enjoy. It was a good story to follow, that kind of thing, and a fitting way for the Undertaker to go out, I think. The Firefly Funhouse, I do not know what to make of it. I mean, we mentioned this very briefly with Joe Legend, that kind of thing, and it looks like something that you would be stoned on without even being stoned. So.
Yeah, it was a wild kind of match. That obviously it was more of an angle than a match, but it was generally quite well received. I think Bone Knob was very well received. I personally still hold it as my favourite match of last year in WWE Elite. Plus, obviously, I watched mostly that, but I think definitely for me it had everything going for it. Paula, what do you think? Cinematic matches at Mania, were they a good thing?
I think so. Like 2020 was the year of cinematic matches, in my eyes. Not for wrestling as a whole, but for WWE absolutely. At least. I think the Firefly Funhouse was an acquired taste, I'd say. It was neither bad nor good. Whereas Boneyard match,
I just don't understand who was supposed to win it. So
I have no idea. Boneyard match, on the other hand, was outstanding for me.
Yeah, I love Boneyard.
Boneyard match, hands down, best cinematic match of 2020 for WWE. If not wrestling as a whole.
Fair enough. So the next to discuss really is something they did with the tag, things they did with the tag situation. So The Miz pulled out of the show very close to the date. As we remember from last year, WrestleMania was pre-recorded as well, which is another thing. It wasn't live, so it was pre-recorded. And The Miz had pulled out the show. And so what they did is they did for the SmackDown tag titles, they had a ladder match that ended up being a triple threat match between John Morrison, representing himself and obviously The Miz as champions, versus Jimmy Uso and Kofi Kingston of the New Day. This was a bit of a weird contest, and I guess it's something which, as we now sit here a year later, following their release of several tag teams throughout 2020, such as The Revival, AOP, Zack Ryder, and Kurt Hawkins, and Gallows and Anderson all left the company in 2020. We're not too surprised, but this just goes to show
they didn't really leave. They were released.
They were released, yeah. Well, they left the company. They left the company one with the other. Now I guess we're more used to this kind of treatment of the tag team belts, aren't we? Yeah. They just don't care, do they? They just don't care. Because even over on the Raw side of things, it was Street Profits that took on the team of Angel Garza and Austin Theory. Because Andrade also didn't make WrestleMania. And he's also not going to make this year's WrestleMania because he's no longer part of the company.
Well, he might be back now.
Well, she wasn't very on the...
Yeah.
Just checking. Yeah, he wasn't on the card. Yeah, so they had. It's mad though because Austin Theory was on NXT literally weeks before WrestleMania and got a WrestleMania match, which is just mind blowing, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
but,
unheard of.
And then when his story was done with Garza and Andrade, he went back to NXT. They were like, "Well, we're done with you."
Yeah, there came a turning point last year, I think, when they started. When they started knowing what the Thunderdome, when they decided to go, okay, we're going to start bringing the stars back, because a lot of stars sat out of WrestleMania, didn't they? The biggest one,
because
they
didn't have the magnitude. Because they didn't have the magnitude of people shouting their name and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So
well, yeah, I guess like for some people it was family things around. The biggest dog of them all, Roman Reigns, of course, he sat out of WrestleMania, and that led to probably the biggest change on the card taking place as the match between Roman Reigns and Goldberg was cancelled effectively, and it was changed to a match between Goldberg and Braun Strowman, and that took place in the penultimate spot of night 2 at WrestleMania last year. The World title match it wasn't night 2, night 1. 1 second. The match for the Universal Championship took place the penultimate match of night 1, whereas the WWE Championship was defended, of course, in the main event of night 2. Was you happy with Braun Strowman replacing Roman Reigns, or was there someone else that could have replaced him?
Yes and no.
I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it just as long as Goldberg got his ass whooped. So
I didn't mind it, but the match as a whole was a bit of a train wreck.
It's a Goldberg match about crowd. Yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? Exactly, it lasted about 2 minutes.
Without the crowd, no one gives a shit. So
without the crowd, you're just looking at the match. Like, with the crowd, you're listening to the reaction. You're seeing
because there isn't
it's just not as dramatic.
And there isn't anyone there chatting Goldberg.
Exactly. So you need the fans to make a match that's going to be more dramatic and good.
Well, obviously the fans are a big part of the WWE product, and obviously WrestleMania 37 is due to have fans, depending on regulations. I'm going to say that in case they change their mind. So WrestleMania 37 is due to have fans. I think we've missed them sorely, because you miss them react to stuff, don't you?
Yeah.
Last year, I felt it was a good year for the women at WrestleMania. They had 5 matches in total, including one of the pre-show. But the women's tag team belts were defended. So it was a SmackDown and Raw Women's Championships, and for the first time ever, the NXT Women's Championship was defended at WrestleMania,
which I think was the first NXT Championship to be defended at WrestleMania.
It was,
if I'm correct.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
was. That saw Charlotte Flair.
The thing about that match. The thing about that match, though, was as good as it was. The match. The thing that went on the comments the next day was just about the screaming between the two.
Yeah,
there was more screaming in that than in that. More screaming in that tennis match. So
the thing is, that will probably be the normal amount, but because there's no crowd to drown it out, you realise it more.
Yeah, it was very odd because obviously the people might have forgotten this. This was before the Thunderdome, before the Performance Centre, and the people behind the plexiglass, wearing masks were on. This was literally no one. Fuck all. No one was there.
It was
not a soul inside. And another women's match, to be fair, that was quite a big talking point at the time, because what happened afterwards really was the match between Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler. Now, Shayna Baszler debuted, remember, at the her first pay-per-view match, was at the last event with fans. Pay-per-view with fans, Elimination Chamber, where she dominated and she won the chamber and she won the right to obviously be in the women's title match at WrestleMania against Becky Lynch. Now, Becky Lynch won that match, and it was quite a weird match. I mean, I actually watched this back quite recently, and you see how they were trying to cover things like Shayna Baszler's very easy on her strikes. There's not many bumps, obviously, from Becky Lynch. And as we would find out later on in the year, or about a month later or so after Money in the Bank, we found out that Becky Lynch was pregnant
with child,
with a child, around WrestleMania. But the decision was made to keep her, keep the championship on her, and she relinquished it, obviously, to the Money in the Bank winner, who happened to be Asuka. But there was a time when people thought Sasha Banks, people thought Shayna Baszler was going to be the women's champion, and it still hasn't happened, despite her obviously having 2 women's tag team title reigns. So my question to you really is, can Shayna Baszler find a way back into the Raw or SmackDown women's championship pictures? Yeah, where did we put her? So where did we cut off then?
It was talking about Shayna Baszler.
Oh, Porter, your mic, you can't hear you.
There we go.
Okay, cool. So I'll ask question again.
Talking about
so does Shayna Baszler find her way back into the Raw or SmackDown women's title picture?
It's a difficult one to say because it's very rare these days now that when someone calls up from NXT and then they're put into something that is not the main picture, it's difficult for them to get out of it. Vince McMahon has not really been good when it comes to people when it comes to people from NXT. I mean, some people have been good at it, yeah, but not all of them. And usually it's that case. You can't really escape from it. An example would be, someone brings a child a toy, and the child says, "No, I don't want that toy. I wanted this one." That is the case of Shayna Baszler, Vince McMahon with Shayna Baszler, I think. So
yeah, so too.
Yeah.
As much as I want her to, I don't think she will. I think if she was going to win it, it would have been last year at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think that was a one and done.
I think that would have been the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, and I think if Becky didn't announce that she was pregnant, I think things could have gone a little bit differently. I think Becky was okay, but I think it was one of the matches that got changed last minute to Becky winning. It was meant to be Shayna all along. Then it was changed at the 11th hour when Vince decided that she should win. And while I guess that it was a nice moment, her, I guess, handing over the title after that, it did feel a bit like the kind of Shawn Michaels kind of vibe. Yeah. When Shawn Michaels would never lose a championship before, he'd always find a way to lose his smile before he lost a title in the 90s.
Yeah, pull a diva moment, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, as much as obviously I don't think Becky was behind that, as a company was, I still think it's
in a way, Seth Rollins was, if you catch my drift.
Yeah, Seth.
So yeah.
Well, big moment he took part in, really, with his match against Kevin Owens, with Kevin Owens jumping off the WrestleMania sign.
Yeah. That might be my favourite moment from Mania last year.
Oh,
that was a good moment. That was a good moment.
It was a good moment. I also, something we need to discuss now really is the match between, in my opinion, it was a down point of the show. The match between Edge and Randy Orton, the last man standing match. And we've spoken about last man standing matches quite a lot. Obviously, please, guys, check out our content we did about the Rumble, regarding the last man standing match. It just didn't deliver last year for me. It was too slow. It was almost 40 minutes long.
And the build-up was good, but the match itself just did not deliver. And plus, it was weird. Obviously, I understand why they went into the back and stuff to try and distract from the empty arena, but without those big moments, without a crowd, it just didn't go well. It's like serving up a steak without the peppercorn sauce. That's what it's like. You know what I mean? There's just nothing. It was just bland, nothing to it. So.
Yeah, I think I wasn't totally against the finish. Edge hitting the what is it called? Concerto. Whatever it is. Hitting that on Randy Orton. I wasn't totally against that. I quite like that as like a nice finishing touch.
But did it have to? But couldn't it have just been? My problem with last man standing matches are this: if you just have the same exact match, but just call it no DQ, no holds barred, whatever you want to call it, like Drew and Sheamus had recently at Fastlane. For instance, you get all the crazy spots in that you need to get it, but without the fact you have to slow the match down every 5 seconds for the referee to go 1, 2, 3, because you just get that, wouldn't you? You'd still get, if you had a Randy Orton versus Edge match like that, they could have brawled around the entire arena with some pinfalls in the gym, which would have been quite fun. They could have done pinfalls on the outside, but without having to constantly slow the match down. And it's interesting because Edge hasn't wrestled a non-Rumble or non-cinematic match apart from his match against Jey Uso since he returned over a year ago to the company. which is a bit weird considering he's about to main event WrestleMania 37. Do we think Edge is going to become world champion again?
I think they'd be stupid not to.
It's hard.
Like, if you think about it, they've just brought him back from retirement, a career-ending injury, to have him lose at WrestleMania.
It kind of puts a downer on the whole, comeback story kind of thing.
Yeah, come back. We'll put you in the main event at WrestleMania. You're not going to win, though. It's like a bit of it's a backhanded compliment to Edge.
Yeah, why would I come back when I can go over here and become a champion, just like my best friend did? That kind of thing. So,
although
we're made to see if Christian
plan, I don't think,
ends up becoming champion elsewhere. But I think they might see it that he had his moment last year, his Mania win and return last year. So maybe in future years he might not need them, and perhaps he doesn't want them. To be fair,
maybe
we shall see. I think another kind of down point from last year was Bobby Lashley's role in WrestleMania, and he has to beat really that like on the biggest kind of turn ever. Last year, by the way, he lost to Aleister Black in a sort of mid-card kind of match,
mediocre match.
Yeah, mediocre mid-card match, and this year he's going in as the WWE champion.
The almighty WWE champion.
Aleister Black is no longer on television, it seems. So, Bobby Lashley, that was one of those moments I thought, he could have been a bit of a bigger deal last year. Everyone was gunning for him last year. But final question then to you guys. Did it work then last year? Like, is this Mania going to be able to be viewed in 5 years' time, let's say? The same way that maybe we go back to watching WrestleMania 30 to watch, the Miracle on Bourbon Street, or we go back to watch WrestleMania 31 and we see the Seth Rollins cash in, for instance. Are there any of those moments on this Mania that in a few years' time we could be showing our younger talking crapettes,
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, right? Last year's WrestleMania, you could probably call it an experiment, if you will, to see if they could actually pull off a show during the pandemic. That's what it was. And plus, like I said, they were going against something they had absolutely no idea about. The thing about the pandemic, no one knew as much as we don't know about it now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So going head on into dangerous waters, which I commend WWE for, really, really. But as far as can it be looked as a normal kind of thing, no, it can't. It just cannot, because like I said, there was no crowd there. And it was I'm not going to say the debut of the cinematic matches, because there've been a couple of cinematic matches before, but they really needed more of it just to distract from the emptiness from the arena, that kind of thing. So cinematic-wise, yes, that's normal, but as far as everything else, no, you can't categorize it as a normal thing. You can look at it as it is a one-off in bad times. So
I disagree. Could you count it as a normal WrestleMania? No. Could you still count it as WrestleMania? Not just because it's labeled as WrestleMania, but because it has those once in a lifetime matches and wins that you probably wouldn't see at any other pay-per-view. For example, Drew McIntyre winning the World Championship for the first time. Would that have happened anywhere but WrestleMania? No. Like Goldberg losing to Braun Strowman, again, wouldn't happen anywhere but WrestleMania.
I see what you're going for this.
Someone jumping off the WrestleMania sign or any sign, unless it's Shane McMahon, not going to happen. So I'd say, in regards to big moments, yes, it is WrestleMania.
I sit on the fence
because of the label.
I sit on the fence with it. I think there are some moments to it that we might be able to go back to in a few years, and it's definitely integral to the journey of Drew McIntyre, which we hope continues throughout the years. Because I think they will be re-showing that amazing moment at the Rumble when he Claymore kicked Brock Lesnar out of the Rumble, and most likely, Champagne Charlie, you jumped for joy when you saw that in that Rumble. But it was such a good moment.
Fuck Lesnar. That's
It was such a good moment, and it's so integral to the start of Drew McIntyre, and potentially in 5 years' time, when we're looking at him as perhaps probably a 10-time champion by the time the way they book these things nowadays. But when we're looking at him as like hopefully one of the greatest champions of all time, like it isn't that it started at this WrestleMania essentially with that rise. So it's important for that, I guess. But it's sadly if it doesn't work out with Drew, I'd argue there's not many other moments, that I could really pick.
Is with Drew McIntyre though, they're making him more and more like William Wallace now. First off by giving him the kilt again, and the sword coming down to ring. Then recently having him wear the blue and the white on his face. The next thing they'll have him say, if he becomes champion again, is this: "You may take my title, but you'll never take my freedom."
I've said this the other day. I think it's almost as if Vince McMahon has legitimately just been shown a copy of Braveheart and thinks it's a new movie. He legitimately thinks it came out like last week or something. And he's like, "This is the hottest shit known to man. Let me get this all over the product."
Wasn't a bad film, to be fair, but
wasn't, yeah.
But hey ho. Okay, yeah. So as we, the final kind of thoughts on WrestleMania 36, I think it's all a mixed kind of bag, isn't it? I think it's safe to say. There are definitely some moments that are there for fans to rewatch if they so wish. But here's a question then, hypothetical question: what if WWE had stopped? WWE, they were fortunate, and they've been thankful for this. But they were fortunate to be able to continue by the governing body in Florida. Obviously, everything stopped, as we know. Football, tennis, Olympics was cancelled. Everything stopped. But WWE were able to continue throughout the pandemic. And to me, and to kind of me, like mental health wise, it really helped me through the start of that pandemic.
Absolutely.
Because it felt normal.
And not just with WWE, all the other companies as well that remained open. So.
Well, for a while, it was just WWE and AEW, wasn't it, though? At first, it was WWE and AEW that stayed open because they were able to run from Florida.
And to be fair, Impact remained open as well.
Impact were like 50. They had some stuff in the backlog that they had already pre-taped, and then they just started pre-taping loads.
Like they batch loads.
And all the other companies closed. I mean, Japan closed for a while. MLW closed, NWA closed, that kind of thing.
Everything in Britain
stopped. NWA almost died.
Almost completely died, So.
Everything in Britain. But, I mean, what would it look like, though? I think, obviously, I feel if WWE shut, then obviously everywhere else was shut, let's be real. Because they are the market leaders.
Yeah, I think without WWE, no disrespect to every other promotion in the world, wrestling would die. Because WWE is the only thing that makes wrestling a pop culture icon that it is.
To an extent, I mean, that's a separate kind of question, separate kind of thing. But in terms of this actual pandemic era, I think at the end of the day, WWE would only have stopped if they were told they were not allowed to run shows. So if they were told
by
that,
law.
Then, So if they were told that, then obviously every other one would have been told that, wouldn't they?
Well, here's the thing, though. I think if they'd have been told to shut up shop for a while, I don't think it would have been the end of them permanently, because WWE at the end of the day are a multi-billion-dollar company. Okay, so I think they would have enough money to put away for a rainy day to go on hiatus for how long. Plus, here's the thing: they've got something that no other company has. They've got for us anyway. They've got the WWE Network, and also now Peacocks as well. They would have continued to add things to the network to make it more people watch that and keep the money coming in. So that's the advantage.
Well, they still would have had merch sales as well.
Exactly, that's the advantage they have. That the network in particular is the advantages that the other companies don't have.
Well, in one way they could have done it. They could have actually just shut in Raw's time slot. They could have literally just shown Raw from about 20 years ago, and they could have just done that. For every single time they're on television. And just shown all the old.
Then you're introducing new fans to the content. So.
And obviously NXT UK, it became like a clip show, like a highlights thing, didn't it? They had the wrestlers talking about their favorite matches and stuff. So they could have had a lot of that kind of stuff. And obviously stuff like R-Truth's game show, I believe, on the network, that was all done virtual. But I think what I'm getting at is there would have been enough content not wrestling, sadly,
To keep them
not new
afloat.
wrestling at least, but to keep them afloat and to keep the money coming in, definitely.
See, now I would not have put it past WWE had they started playing WCW on a Wednesday in replace of NXT.
Because the thing is, that would make even more sense, considering obviously we're up against competition.
Monday Nitro against like Dynamite on TNT as well.
As much as I think it's going to pain JJ to admit this, I do think they'd probably be very successful in the ratings in a weird way.
They'd have probably unintentionally like killed off half of AEW's fan base if they'd done that.
But yeah, at the end of the day,
God,
there really wouldn't have been AEW to go against though, because obviously if WWE shut down, AEW would have done too. But it's an interesting time because I thought that, I thought what could happen is maybe they could also just be doing pay-per-views only. That could have been a thing for a while. But yeah, last bit then we'll snip. Maybe we might snip. It's up to you, Porter, new editing, I guess. Last bit is, do you think they should have fans? Well, do you think, or are you hopeful that they'll be having fans back more regularly after WrestleMania? So obviously at the TV again, like at Raw and SmackDown. They're not too sure. They haven't announced anything for it so far.
Can I start this one off? I think yes, because here's the thing. AEW started letting fans back in, but at social distance at a time. They've got, like, for Jacksonville, they let about, 1,000 people in. And like I said, that is still spread out. So if they're doing it, I don't see any reason why WWE shouldn't do the same. And here's the thing: they're both in Florida. WWE is in Orlando, and AEW have been doing shows in Jacksonville now for the past year. So, like I said, I don't see any reason why not.
If I'm correct, they did it on NXT. They brought some fans in.
Yeah, they mixed them in with the
performance center
people.
So
but only about maybe 30?
Yeah, not many. But if they've done it on NXT, there's nothing stopping them from doing it on Raw. Same as the argument with AEW.
Yeah, I think the difference is like main roster is the whole. Maybe I guess from Monday Night Raw they want it to be packed. I think that's the thing. But Vince was obviously talking last year about wanting this year's Mania to have obviously the full shebang. Yeah. And obviously I think they've given up, and they even tried to push it, didn't they, when they announced tickets on sale, and they wanted 45,000 but told no, it has to be 25,000. Only 25,000, believe it or not. On each night. But I think definitely they should find a way to, what I would like to see, to be fair, is them to go to some of their older, smaller venues and make maybe a more intimate feel
like the Manhattan Center, like old school Raw, that kind of thing. So
yeah, I think they're becoming nice. I think Raw needs a makeover. It needs to look different. It needs to feel different.
Yeah, it needs to be It needs to be like grungy, like it used to be in the 90s. But because that's what Raw originally was. It was going to be, instead of just being a big show like they did with the pay-per-views, they wanted it to be a small niche commodity, that kind of thing. Yeah, for a certain type of audience. That's what it needs. I think it needs that kind of edginess to it again.
But yeah, I mean, it's been a wild year that we've had in the WWE and in wrestling in general. Everything from cinematic matches.
Just in life in general, to be fair.
Yeah, fans to no fans.
But during all that, though, if you're a wrestling fan, wrestling has been there for the fans, that kind of thing. I mean, and what a time, pandemic or not, it's a great time to be a wrestling fan because wrestling's on nearly every day now. I mean, look at it this way: you've got Raw on a Monday, and Dark Elevation on a Monday as well. Tuesday you've got Impact, NWA, and AEW Dark. Wednesday NXT and AEW Dynamite. Thursday MLW on YouTube. Friday you've got SmackDown, and then at the weekends, whenever there's a pay-per-view on, you've got those as well, like
takeovers and NXT UK.
Exactly. So at one point in the month, you're having 7 full days of wrestling. So
yeah, and WWE are doing it this for WrestleMania week. So if this was blah blah. So, Paul, if you wanted to, you could cut that bit all about like the fans after Mania thing out of the episode. To be fair, have it separate and have this at the ending. It's up to you. I don't know how long. I think it has been quite.
I might use that as backlogs.
what I just said then.
The
whole segment.
The whole segment about.
I might use that as like a Mania themed backlogs.
Then okay, so the actual ending is coming now in 3, 2. So yeah, thanks guys for joining me for that chat. It was nice talking about WrestleMania 36 1 year on, and this of course kicks off talking crap of Mania, as we've got a whole 10 days of content coming your way, including a 3-part WrestleMania special. We've got episodes of backlogs. We've got our NXT and WrestleMania predictions and our WrestleMania reactions all coming up. And the only way to do that, we need one way that you can find out what is coming up on our channel next, and that is to
like, share, subscribe, or we egg your house. There we go. So, yeah.
Will we?
I think we will. It's 6 feet apart, 2 meters, 2 meters. You know.
Can you throw 2 meters?
Exactly. Yeah. So.
But until then, I've been Lucas, joined by Josh and Champagne Charlie, and thank you guys. And take care.
Take it easy.